When my daughter told me to obey her husband or get out of my own house, I did something that frightened both of them more than anger ever could. I smiled. Harry was standing in my living room with one hand wrapped around a beer bottle and the other pointing toward the kitchen, like I was a waiter who had disappointed him. Tiffany stood beside him, my only child, my little girl, the same girl I had carried through pneumonia at age 7 and walked down the aisle with my wife's pearls sewn into her bouquet. She looked me in the eye and said, "Dad, you need to decide. Either help Harry and do what he asks, or pack your things and leave." For a few seconds, the television kept talking behind them. Some game show host was laughing. The refrigerator hummed. A grocery bag slipped off the counter and spilled apples across the floor. Nobody bent to pick them up. Harry smirked because he thought he knew me. Tiffany looked annoyed because she thought this was another one of those arguments where I would sigh, apologize for making everyone uncomfortable, and buy peace with whatever part of myself was left. They both expected surrender. Instead, I said, "All right." Harry lifted his chin. "Good. Now get me the beer." I shook my head. I'll pack. My name is Clark Dawson. I was 68 years old, widowed, retired from 30 years in banking, and tired in a way sleep could not fix. My wife Martha had died 4 years earlier after a long illness that drained the light out of our home one room at a time. On her last good morning, she held my hand and made me promise I would keep the family close. I took that promise too literally. When Tiffany called 6 months after the funeral and said Harry had lost his job, I sent money before she finished explaining. When he lost the next job, I paid 3 months of their mortgage. When the bank started calling them, I told them to move into my house temporarily. Tiffany said 6 weeks. 5 years passed. Then Harry moved into Martha's sewing room. He did it while I was at a doctor's appointment. When I came home, her old cutting table was in the garage. Her fabric bins were stacked beside the trash cans, and Harry had mounted a television where her shelves had been. Tiffany followed me into the hallway, wringing her hands, telling me he needed a place to decompress because unemployment was hurting his confidence. Instead, I swallowed the hurt and told myself families required patience. Patience became permission. I paid the utilities. I bought groceries. I renewed the insurance on cars I did not drive. I repaired the furnace, replaced the water heater, and covered Harry's phone after he claimed he needed it for job interviews. In public, he called me generous. In private, he called me old man. Tiffany translated every insult into a plea for understanding. "He didn't mean it that way. He's under pressure. Please do not start something, Dad." And because I loved her, because I missed Martha, because I was terrified of being alone in a silent house, I let those sentences become rules. Then came that Saturday. I had spent almost 4 hours at the store because Harry liked certain brands and complained if I bought the wrong ones. I used most of my Social Security check before the month had even begun. I bought Tiffany's coffee creamer, Harry's steaks, paper towels, laundry soap, and the imported beer he liked to hold while telling people he was between opportunities. When I pushed through the front door, my back hurt and my hands were red from the plastic bag handles. Harry was in my leather recliner, the one Martha had saved for and surprised me with on my 60th birthday. His shoes were on the footrest. The television was too loud. He did not look at the groceries. He did not say thank you. He said, "Old man, get me another beer." I stood there with a gallon of milk in each hand, and for one strange second I saw my whole life from outside it. I saw a retired man buying food for adults who mocked him. I saw a widower preserving a family that was feeding on his fear. I saw my daughter standing in the doorway, waiting to see which side was easier. I set the bags down. "Excuse me." Harry finally turned his head. "You heard me. Corona, not that cheap stuff. I just got home," I said. "The groceries need to be put away." He rolled his eyes. "You're already standing." Something inside me went very still. "This is my house," I said. Harry stood slowly. He was taller than I was, broader, younger, and he liked reminding me of all three facts without saying them. "Your house," he said. "Tiffany and I live here. Because I allowed it." That was when Tiffany walked in. She looked from him to me, saw the dangerous shape of the moment, and chose the path she had learned to choose. "Dad," she said softly, "just get him the beer. It is not worth fighting over." I looked at her. I waited. She did not move toward me. Harry smiled. "You live in our house now. When I ask you to do something, you do it." I said nothing. Tiffany folded her arms. "Dad, you need to decide. Either help Harry and do what he asks, or pack your things and leave." So I packed. The bedroom looked smaller while I filled the suitcase. I did not take much. 3 changes of clothes, my medicine, my glasses, a shaving kit, the folder with my bank records and insurance policies, Martha's photograph from Flathead Lake, the one where the wind had blown her hair across her face and she was laughing too hard to pose. Tiffany came to the doorway once. "Dad, don't be dramatic." I folded a sweater and placed it in the suitcase. "I am doing what you told me to do." I did not mean forever. That sentence almost broke me. Not because it was tender, because it was honest. She had expected me to hurt for a little while, then come back smaller. Harry called from the living room. Let him cool off. He'll be back by dinner. I zipped the suitcase. When I rolled it down the hallway, neither of them offered to carry anything. Neither of them apologized. Harry was back in the recliner. Tiffany stood by the kitchen island with her phone in her hand, thumb moving like she was already writing the version of events that made her the injured party. The apples were still on the floor. I stepped over them and walked out. The first place I went was not the police station, not a friend's house, not even a lawyer's office. I drove to a small motel on the edge of town, the kind with outside doors and a vending machine that hummed all night. Inside room 14, I sat on the bed and waited for the panic to arrive. It did not. What came instead was silence. I slept 4 hours. At dawn, I bought coffee from the gas station next door, opened my laptop, and began doing what 30 years in banking had taught me to do. I reviewed the documents. The house was mine. Only mine. The deed had never changed. There was no mortgage with a lender. Tiffany had told people she and Harry were paying the mortgage. But what they had called a mortgage was supposed to be a monthly repayment to my retirement account for money I had advanced them years earlier. They had not made those payments in 11 months. The vehicles were in their names, but insured under my policy. The credit cards were mine, with Tiffany listed as an authorized user. Their cell phones ran through an account I paid. The utilities came from my checking account. A small automatic transfer went to Tiffany every Friday because she once told me she needed breathing room. I wrote everything down. Then I waited until 8 in the morning and started calling. I did not steal from them. I did not touch their private accounts. I did not cancel anything a child depended on, because there were no children in that house. I simply stopped volunteering my money for adults who had ordered me out of the property, securing their comfort. First, I ended the weekly transfer. Second, I removed Harry's truck and Tiffany's car from my insurance with the required notice. Third, I canceled the authorized user card. Fourth, I changed passwords on every account that belonged to me. Fifth, I called the utility companies and placed a note on each account that no changes could be made without my direct authorization. By noon, my hand ached from writing confirmation numbers. My phone stayed quiet. They did not know yet. That was the eerie part. Back at the house, Harry was probably drinking the beer I had bought. Tiffany was probably telling herself I would return when I missed my bed. They had no idea the foundation under their life had begun to move. The 9th call was to an attorney named Susan Bell. Susan had handled probate for Martha's estate, and she had the calm voice of a woman who had watched families reveal themselves over china cabinets and lawn mowers. I told her the whole thing. Not just the beer, the 5 years, the unpaid repayments, the insurance, the way Tiffany had stood beside Harry and told me to leave. Susan listened without interrupting. Then she said, "Clark, I need you to hear me. Family arrangements are dangerous when every person is relying on a different version. We need to put the truth in writing." She advised a formal notice to vacate, a full review of my estate documents, and immediate documentation of every financial connection. She also told me not to go back to the house alone. "You think Harry might be violent?" I asked. "I think people who feel entitled to another person's property often confuse boundaries with attacks," she said. That sentence stayed with me. On Monday morning, I met her at her office with my folder. Susan's assistant made copies while I sat beneath a framed photograph of the county courthouse and watched rain crawl down the window. Instead, she asked a question that made the room seem to tilt. "Has anyone tried to borrow against your house?" "No," I said. "Are you sure?" I almost answered too quickly. Then I remembered a strange call 2 months earlier from a bank where I used to work. A young employee had asked whether I had requested documents for a home equity application. I told her no. She apologized, said it must have been a filing error, and the matter vanished. At least I thought it had. Susan picked up her phone and called an old colleague still working in lending. She did not use accusations. She simply asked whether any application involving my address had crossed their desk. 10 minutes later, her expression changed. She covered the receiver and looked at me. "Clark," she said, "you need to prepare yourself. The bank would not release everything without a formal request, but friendship moves faster than paperwork." By Tuesday morning, an old co-worker named Bob called and asked me to meet him at a diner where the booths were cracked and the waitress still called everyone honey. He slid into the booth across from me carrying a manila envelope. "I rejected it personally," he said. "Rejected what?" He opened the envelope just enough for me to see copies, not originals. A home equity packet, my address at the top, a requested amount of $50,000. Harry's name printed as applicant, Tiffany's signature as spouse, and below that, a version of my signature that looked so familiar my stomach turned. "That's from my insurance form," I said. Bob nodded, lifted and pasted. Whoever did it was sloppy, but not ignorant. They included a deed, fake. They included an appraisal, real enough. They included a statement claiming you were mentally declining, and that Tiffany would soon have power of attorney. The diner noise faded. Bob tapped one page with his finger. "The bank killed it, because title search showed the property in your name only. But I kept the packet because something about it bothered me. Did Tiffany know?" He hesitated. That hesitation answered before he did. "Her name appears on an email," Bob said. "It says, 'Dad signs whatever I put in front of him.' I had spent 5 years forgiving Harry for being Harry. I had told myself he was insecure, lazy, jealous, immature, anything but dangerous. But Tiffany's sentence cut through every excuse. 'Dad signs whatever I put in front of him.'" Bob kept his voice low. "There is more. People are saying Harry owes money. Casino money, maybe $18,000, maybe more. Does Tiffany know that too? I do not know. I did not finish my breakfast. From the diner, I called Detective Jim Morrison. Jim and I had served on the same Veterans Charity Board for years. I told him about the packet. He told me to come in. At the station, I handed over copies of what Bob had shown me and gave a statement. Jim did not look surprised when I mentioned Harry's name. "We've heard some things," he said, about gambling debts, and a couple of men from out of county looking for him. Nothing we can charge from rumors. This is different. Forgery is different. Then he leaned back and studied me. "Clark, has Harry been receiving mail at your house?" "For 5 years. Has he made any improvements to the property?" "Paid taxes." "Put himself on utilities?" "No taxes." "Some utilities were in his name for a few months, but I paid them." "Why?" Jim's mouth tightened. "Because he asked a lawyer about adverse possession." I had worked around contracts long enough to understand the phrase, but hearing it attached to my home made my chest go hollow. Harry had not merely been freeloading. He had been researching how long a trespass could pretend to be ownership. Jim explained that the plan was foolish and unlikely to succeed under our facts, but foolish plans can still destroy years of peace. Harry had been building stories. To neighbors, he and Tiffany were buying the house from me. To relatives, I was confused and dependent. To the bank, I was declining and ready to hand over authority. To me, he was just an arrogant man in a recliner demanding beer. That afternoon, Susan filed the notice to vacate. 30 days. Formal, documented. No more family fog. We also petitioned for a restraining order based on the forged loan attempt and Harry's behavior. I thought serving the papers would make the phone ring. It did. Tiffany called 17 times in 1 hour. I let every call go to voicemail until Susan told me to save them. The first message was confused. The second angry. By the fifth, Tiffany was crying. "Dad, you cannot just throw us out. Harry says you are confused. He says this is elder paranoia. Please call me before you embarrass yourself." Elder paranoia. I played that message 3 times, not because I enjoyed the pain, but because I needed to memorize the sound of my daughter, repeating the language Harry had prepared for her. Then, Harry left a message of his own. "You think you are smart. You think paperwork scares me. That house is marital property now. Ask around. You leave an old man alone too long, and he forgets who takes care of him." I forwarded it to Jim. 2 days later, the restraining order was granted. Harry could not come near me, threaten me, or interfere with my property. That did not stop him from performing. By Saturday morning, half the town seemed to know a version in which I had abandoned my daughter, cut her off without warning, and turned unstable after Martha died. A woman from church sent a text saying she was praying for my heart to soften. A cousin left a message asking if I had been checked for dementia. For a moment, I almost called Tiffany. I almost apologized just to make the noise stop. Then Susan called. "Do not chase the rumors," she said. "Build the record." So I built it. Every receipt, every transfer, every insurance premium, every mortgage repayment that never came, every forged page, every voicemail. I created a folder on my laptop named Evidence, and by the end of the week, it contained more truth than my family had spoken in years. The next reveal came from the one place Harry could not keep his mouth shut. A bar. Detective Morrison called me on a Thursday night and told me not to react until he finished speaking. That is never how good news begins. A bartender had overheard Harry bragging that the old man would cave once Tiffany gave him the baby news. Harry said I had always wanted a grandchild, and that one ultrasound picture would put me back in line. I sat very still on the edge of the motel bed. "Tiffany is pregnant?" I asked. "I do not know," Jim said. I know Harry is talking like he plans to use it. The message arrived the next morning. It was from Tiffany's phone, but it sounded like Harry's voice wearing her skin. Dad, I did not want to tell you this way. Stress is bad for the baby. If anything happens because of what you are doing, I hope you can live with yourself. Attached was an ultrasound image. My hands went weak. For 10 full seconds, I was not a banker, not a man building evidence, not a father with boundaries. I was a grandfather who had just seen the smallest gray shape on a screen and felt every locked door in my heart fly open. Then I noticed the clinic name in the corner. It was in Ohio. Tiffany had never been to Ohio. I called Susan before I called my daughter. Susan told me to send the image to her investigator. Within an hour, he found the exact picture on a parenting website from 7 years earlier. Harry had stolen a stranger's baby picture to put a leash around my grief. I drove to the diner where Tiffany had agreed to meet me. She arrived wearing sunglasses, though the day was cloudy. Her hair was unwashed. She looked smaller than she had in my kitchen, and for one dangerous moment, pity tried to dress itself up as forgiveness. I placed a printed copy of the ultrasound on the table. Is this real? I asked. She stared at it. Her mouth opened, closed, opened again. Dad, is it real? Tears gathered behind the sunglasses. No. The word was barely sound. I leaned back. Did you know when he sent it? She nodded. That hurt more than the first lie. Silence can be a weapon when you know exactly where it will land. He said you would not help unless you thought there was a baby, she whispered. He said, we just needed time. He said if I corrected him, he would leave me with everything. So you were willing to trap me instead. She covered her face. I let her cry. Dad, I am scared, she said. I believe you. Harry has debt collectors calling. He says if we lose the house, he is finished. He never had the house. I know. Do you? Because you stood beside him and told me to leave it. She flinched like I had shouted. I had not raised my voice. Before we could say more, Harry walked in. He had followed her. He scanned the room, saw us, and smiled. There you are, he said. Family meeting without me. I put my phone on the table and pressed record. His eyes dropped to it. Careful, I said. Restraining order. He stopped 3 feet from the booth, close enough for me to smell stale beer and cigarette smoke. You are ruining your daughter, he said. Everybody knows it. Everybody knows what you told them. That is not the same thing. His jaw worked. Tiffany whispered, Harry, please go. He turned on her so fast the waitress stepped back. Shut up. You wanted me to handle this. There it was. Not love. Not partnership. Control, ugly and public. I looked at my daughter, and I saw the first crack in the wall she had built to protect him. Harry pointed at me. You owe us. 5 years we took care of you. I laughed once, not because it was funny, but because the lie was too large to enter any other way. I can document every dollar I spent supporting you, I said. Can you document where your paychecks went? The diner went quiet. His face reddened. I said, how are the gambling debts? That silence was different. It had weight. Harry looked around and realized the room had stopped belonging to him. You miserable old man, he said. Then he left. Tiffany sat frozen. For the first time, she did not defend him. 3 days later, Harry disappeared. He packed his truck while Tiffany was at work, emptied what little money remained in their joint account, and left behind a garage full of boxes, 2 unpaid credit cards, and a wife who finally understood she had been useful only while I was. Men like Harry do not leave when love dies. They leave when the money does. Harry was already gone, but the damage he left behind had the feeling of him. Holes in the wall where he had mounted televisions. Gray stains on Martha's sewing room carpet. Empty beer boxes stacked beside old bank envelopes. In the desk drawer, Susan found a folder labeled Future Plans. Inside were printouts about power of attorney, adverse possession, elder competency evaluations, and home equity strategies. The last page was a handwritten list in Harry's blocky print. Get Clark declared dependent. Transfer deed. Loan after POA. Tiffany saw the list and sat down on the hallway floor. I did not know about this, she said. The law could decide what part belonged to Harry. I had to decide what part belonged to us. Investigators found him 3 states away after he used Tiffany's identity on another loan application. That attempt connected neatly to the packet Bob had saved. Harry eventually pleaded guilty to forgery and fraud. The gambling debts were not crimes by themselves, but they explained the urgency. He had needed money fast, and my house had looked to him like a vault with an old man standing in front of it. Tiffany filed for divorce. She cooperated with investigators. Her cooperation helped her avoid charges, more serious than the ones Susan said were possible, but it did not erase the email. Dad signs whatever I put in front of him. That sentence stayed between us like a locked gate. A week after Harry's arrest, Tiffany asked to meet at the diner. She looked older. Not dramatically, just enough that I could see what panic had taken from her. Her nails were bitten short. She held her coffee with both hands. I do not know how to fix this, she said. You cannot fix it all at once. Tell me what to do. I shook my head. No, I will tell you what I need. You decide whether to do it. She nodded. Honesty, I said. Specific honesty. Not a private apology that lets public lies keep working. Harry told people I was unstable. You repeated it. People from church, relatives, neighbors, even a cousin I have not seen in 10 years, now think I threw you out because grief made me cruel. If you want any relationship with me, you correct the record. The eyes widened. Publicly. Yes. Date everyone will know. They already think they know. She looked down at her coffee. What will they think of me? I said. They will think you had a father who gave up retirement security for your comfort, and that you took it for granted until it disappeared. She cried again, quietly this time. Then she asked about the house, not rudely, not with the old entitlement. But the question still came, and I understood then how deep the inheritance story had gone. What happens to it now? I had been waiting for that. I donated it, I said. Her head snapped up. What? The Montana Veterans Housing Initiative will receive it. The paperwork is signed. There is a life-use agreement while renovations are planned. But the house is no longer part of any future inheritance. 3 veteran families will live there over time, maybe more. She stared at me as if I had spoken another language. You gave away Mom's house. No, I said. I gave my house a future Harry could not turn into collateral. Are you punishing me? She asked. I am protecting myself. There is a difference. But what if I do everything right? Then perhaps we have a relationship. But the house is not a prize for good behavior. It was never yours while I was alive. Her face changed. Something childish and desperate fell away, and behind it I saw grief. Real grief. Not just for the property. For her mother. For the years she had treated my life like a resource instead of a life. I am sorry, she whispered. Sorry is a beginning, I said, not the finish. That Sunday, Tiffany stood in front of our church. I sat in the 3rd pew, close enough to hear her breathing catch before she spoke. The same people who had texted me prayers and warnings sat around us. Tiffany did not perform. That mattered. She did not tell everyone she had been manipulated and stopped there. She said Harry had lied, and she had helped. She said I paid tuition, wedding expenses, repairs, utilities, groceries, insurance, and more than 1 mortgage payment. She said, I had allowed them to live in my home after her mother died. She said she stood beside her husband while he disrespected me. She said she told her father to leave his own house. Then she said, "My father is not confused. He is not cruel. He is not abandoning me. He is finally telling me no, and I am learning how much damage I caused because I thought his love meant unlimited access." After the service, people came to me in a slow, awkward line. Some shook my hand. Some hugged me. A few apologized without making eye contact. The woman who had prayed for my heart to soften touched my sleeve and said, "I did not understand." Tiffany gave me copies of the letters she had sent, one to the bank, one to the police, one to relatives, one posted online where Harry's version had spread. She named the lies. She did not ask people to forgive her in the same breath. Susan told me that detail mattered because accountability is not a performance where applause closes the curtain. Months passed. Harry's case moved through court. He pleaded guilty because the forged packet, the stolen ultrasound, the loan attempt in Tiffany's name, and his own messages left him little room to dance. He wrote me one letter from jail. It began with a complaint about how Tiffany had ruined his life by talking. It ended with a request for money for a better attorney. I gave the letter to Susan. Then I went fishing. But grief was no longer in charge of my checkbook. I bought a small cabin near Flathead Lake. It had a crick deck, a stubborn screen door, and a view that turned silver at dusk. The first morning there, I made coffee and carried Martha's photograph outside. The air smelled like pine and cold water. No television shouted from another room. No one demanded anything before I had finished my first cup. For a while, the quiet scared me. Then it began to heal me. Tiffany found an apartment above a bakery and took a bookkeeping job. The first month, she called and said the security deposit was higher than expected. I felt the old reflex wake up, already reaching for my wallet. Before I could speak, she said, "Never mind. I hear myself. I will save another month." I said, "That sounds wise." There was a pause. Then she laughed softly through tears. "I hate that it does." We started meeting for coffee on the first Saturday of every month. 30 minutes at first. Public place. Separate checks. Those rules might sound harsh to someone who has never had love used as a withdrawal slip, but to me they were scaffolding. They gave our relationship a shape that did not depend on rescue. One Saturday, she said, "I think I kept choosing Harry because admitting he was wrong meant admitting what I had done to you." I stirred my coffee. "That sounds true. Do you hate me?" There it was, the question underneath every meeting. "No," I said. Her face crumpled. "But I do not trust you the way I used to," I continued. And pretending otherwise would only build another lie. She nodded, crying quietly. "Can trust come back?" "Maybe," I said. "Not as a gift. As a record, built slowly, like all records. For the first time since Martha died. That house looked alive without asking me to bleed for it." In October, Tiffany drove to the cabin. We sat on the deck, while the lake darkened under a sky full of low clouds. She brought soup in a glass container, Martha's recipe. Too much lemon, but close enough to make my throat tighten. She did not ask for money. She did not mention the house. She did not make herself the center of the pain. After a long while, she said, "I keep thinking about what you could have done with all that money. Everything you spent on us." I looked at the water. "I would have spent it on you anyway," I said. "I just would have spent it differently." She closed her eyes. "I did not understand what you were giving up." "No," I said. "But you understand more now. That matters." When she left, she hugged me at the car. It was careful, not demanding. I hugged her back the same way. After her taillights disappeared through the trees, I returned to the deck and sat with Martha's photograph beside me. The cabin was quiet. My time was mine. My home was mine. My love, maybe for the first time in years, belonged to me before it belonged to anyone else. Tiffany's ultimatum was supposed to force me to choose between obedience and homelessness. Instead, it forced me to choose between the appearance of family and the dignity of family should never ask you to surrender. I chose the life Martha had wanted me to keep. Not a life where everyone stayed close at any cost, but a life where love could survive the word no. And for the first time in a long time, I believed I deserved that life. If you know someone who needs to hear this, share this video with them. Thank you for being here. Drop a comment, hit subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.